There are thousands of lakes in the Adirondacks. Some, like Lake George, are big, and they're big enough to handle a lot of boat traffic. But others are much smaller, more remote, more wild, more sensitive. How many motorboats on, say, Long Lake are too many before they affect water quality or fish or the shoreline ecosystem? Are a dozen paddlers too much for Little Wolf Pond in the western Adirondacks? The fact is, we just don't know the answers to those questions, even though the DEC has been tasked to find out for a while. Will the DEC finally do what's known as carrying capacity studies? That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com. And from SciTech Business Solutions, training and consulting services to help businesses grow. More information at citec.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, September 11th, the 23rd anniversary of that terrible day in American history. First up, two high-profile New York politicians had a rare in-person face-off Tuesday in Washington. North Country Congresswoman Elise Stefanik questioned former Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo over his administration's response to COVID-19. It was part of testimony by Cuomo before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic. At issue was a March 2020 executive order that allowed COVID-positive patients to be admitted to New York nursing homes. Critics say that led to an increase in infections and deaths. Stefanik called it deadly. Cuomo blamed then-President Donald Trump's COVID response. But Stefanik attacked him for his multi-million-dollar book deal about his handling of the pandemic. And this exchange resulted.
DC and CMS.
President Trump lied.
This is about those seniors, Governor. They deserve to hear from you in the eye that you apologize, that you were negotiating for a multi-million-dollar book deal. It is a disgrace. There is a reason why you were the former governor of New York State, and you will never hold elected office again. I yield back.
Cuomo resigned in August 2021 after a wave of sexual harassment accusations that he has denied. Cuomo testified before this House subcommittee in June, but it was behind closed doors. A separate state report by Cuomo's successor, Governor Kathy Hochul, was released this summer. It found that while the policies on how nursing homes should handle COVID-19 were, quote, rushed and uncoordinated, they were based on the best understanding of the science at the time. So there's no scientific understanding of how many boats is too many boats on Adirondack lakes and ponds. A new amendment up for debate at Thursday's Adirondack Park Agency meeting would take a step towards understanding that issue. It re-ups a call for a carrying capacity study of lakes and ponds in the park, something environmentalists have been pushing for years. Emily Russell reports.
Dick Gunthert fell in love with the Adirondacks in the early 1970s. So he and his wife built a home on Fish Creek Pond. They've been coming to this spot between Saranac and Tupper Lake every summer since.
It's the scenery, it's the peacefulness of it. You come out here on many days and you'll see people sitting in their boats out here like we are now, just enjoying the sun.
We're in Gunthert's big pontoon boat. He steers us towards the eastern edge of the pond, where it turns into a very narrow channel.
This is Fish Creek, which goes out to Upper Saranac Lake, and as we get in there, you'll see it's an interesting trip if it's crowded.
As we wind our way through the creek, it gets crowded. We pass another big pontoon boat, then a jet ski. Ahead are two canoes, and private docks jut out from both sides. I mean, there's barely any room for one boat going one way and one going the other.
Oh yeah, it gets even narrower up here.
Gunthert says this is a mild day for Fish Creek, but he and others are worried it could get a lot busier. The main marina on the pond is planning to expand, going from what it says is 70 boat slips to more than 90. Gunthert and others think that's just too big for this small pond. Problem is, there's no real data to say whether or not that's true.
Why don't you go out and understand why and what the capacity of the lake is and what you need to monitor it. It may say everything's fine now in many places. Fine, but now you know what you can do for the future.
Gunther is referring to what's known as a carrying capacity study. It's a tool used to determine how much human activity an environment can handle before the impacts are considered unacceptable. New York State's master plan for the Adirondacks calls for a carrying capacity study of lakes and ponds, which it says, quote, should be conducted by the Department of Environmental Conservation. In the end, the Adirondack Park Agency Board approved the marina expansion on Fish Creek Pond. But other projects have also raised concerns about how much human activity Adirondack lakes and ponds can withstand. About 2 years ago, the APA board reviewed a draft plan for a DEC boat launch on Great Sacandaga Lake. That's on the southern edge of the Adirondacks. Board member Benita Law Zhao asked about the lake's carrying capacity.
Is there concern as to how many motorized vehicles are actually even on the lake? I mean, is that an issue?
I'm not aware of any carrying capacity consideration or study being done for that lake.
That's Josh Clegg. He's from the DEC. Another board member at the time followed up with Clegg. Andrea Hogan said a certain portion of the draft unit management plan stuck out to her, so she read it aloud.
And the large water can sustainably support this amount of use. What was that sentence based on then?
There was a long pause before Clegg responded.
Staff opinion? There might be more to that. I can't say for sure. I did not write this UMP.
Claudia Bramer says that response was disappointing to hear. She's the deputy director of Protect the Adirondacks.
I mean, a state agency with as many resources as DEC has, you would think that they would be able to come up with objective numbers, not just staff opinion about what a water body can sustain.
This spring, Protect the Adirondacks sued the DEC, saying the department has a duty to conduct a carrying capacity study, specifically in the Saranac Lake Wild Forest area. Because of that lawsuit, the DEC declined to be interviewed for this story. Meanwhile, the APA is re-upping the issue at this Thursday's meeting. It's proposing amendments to the park's master plan to, quote, fulfill the requirement for carrying capacity analyses. But Dave Gibson from the green group Adirondack Wild says the draft amendments don't add much. And ultimately, Gibson says it's up to the Department of Environmental Conservation to take on the carrying capacity study.
The real onus falls on the DEC. And if one agency, the department in particular, doesn't want to do it, it's not going to move forward.
Meanwhile, Gibson points out that the DEC has spent years on another kind of carrying capacity study.
We have a big visitor use management project going on now in the High Peaks, and that evaluates the carrying capacity of our trails. The same principles should apply to our lakes, where no one is in charge, it seems.
Gibson and others acknowledge it would be a huge undertaking. But carrying capacity studies have helped inform visitor management in other wilderness areas, like the Boundary Waters in Minnesota. The DEC did get the ball rolling about 15 years ago when it tasked SUNY ESF to study the issue. Scientists published Phase 1 of a carrying capacity study in 2011. It's unclear if the department has taken any more concrete steps since then, but leaders in the park have kept pushing for it.
We continually circle around the issues of carrying capacity of water, and I understand it's a big issue.
That's APA Board Chairman John Ernst speaking at a meeting back in 2021.
But at some point, we've got to come to grips with what this means for lakes, because we're making decisions not based on the science of what the lake can withstand.
Back on the water in the central Adirondacks, Dick Gunther drives us from Fish Creek out into Upper Saranac Lake. We're one of the only boats in sight. Gunther says he's worried what more boat traffic on Fish Creek Pond and Upper Saranac will do to the area.
Like one of my neighbors has said when the marina issue got started, someone's trying to make this into Lake George and they're going to ruin it.
There's nothing wrong with Lake George, Gunther says. It's just not the atmosphere he wants out here. As we float in the middle of the quiet lake, a loon surfaces nearby. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio on Fish Creek Pond and Upper Saranac Lake.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Mark Corey of Watertown and Evan Veenstra of Gananoque, Ontario. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.